I want to thank you for joining us in this study of the book of First Thessalonians. You know, we're doing this to help you. We're doing this to make sure that you have a foundation in the Word of God. Now, we've been talking a lot about ministry. We've been talking a lot about how Paul had come to the Thessalonians. And maybe you're thinking, well, you know what? I'm not a preacher. I'm not a minister. But you know what? I really believe that we need to take what Paul says here and then compare it to the people that we are allowing to speak into our lives. Because it's so important. You know, to be real honest with you, there's people out there that are speaking, and all they're looking for is your praise. All they're looking for is your money. And you need to be very, very careful, because what you allow them to sow into your life is going to come out of your life. Now, that's a whole different subject, but I just want to tell you, you know what we're reading here is so important to examine our hearts, but also to examine the people that are speaking into our lives. Now, today, we're in chapter 2, verse number 7. And the Apostle Paul is continuing to talk about the way that he has come to the Thessalonians. Now, let me remind you, the church at Thessalonica is 3 months old. But yet the Apostle Paul, who is several hundred miles away in the Achaia Peninsula in the city of Corinth, is hearing reports about this church. It's hearing reports about their love and their faith. This church is extremely dynamic. Now, verse number 7. But we prove to be gentle among you. What's the Apostle Paul doing? First of all, he told them what he didn't come like. Now he's telling them, this is how we came to you. And so he says, for we prove to be gentle among you as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her own children. What's the Apostle Paul talking about? Paul said, we came to you, and we took on this position of gentleness. And then he describes what this gentleness looks like. And he describes it in a way where almost everybody in the world would understand what this gentleness was. And he says it's like a nursing woman. The Apostle Paul treated the Thessalonians with gentleness. Not with greed. Not with demanding. Not with I am better than you are, you need to praise me. No, he treated them with gentleness, just like a woman who's nursing a small child. We've all seen the example of that, how a woman will take and she will hug that child and she'll care for that child. And the Apostle Paul is saying, that is how I came to you. Not with flattering speech, not with wonderful words, but I came to you with gentleness. The Thessalonians loved and respected Paul, the Thessalonian church, because that's the way he came to the church. You understand? The church grew because of the way it was planted. This church became so dynamic because it knew from the man who started it, or the men who started it, Silas and Timothy were there also. They knew that they were loved and they were treated with gentleness. Now, the Louw-Nida Greek lexicon is one of the Greek lexicons that I read when I study. But it says here, and it describes this fond affection that Paul had. And it describes this phrase to experience a yearning affection for someone, to have a great affection for, or to have a yearning of love. Verse number 8 says, having such a fond affection for you. Paul had that yearning. He had that desire for them on the inside of him. And you know what? That type of atmosphere, that type of motivation will always cause fruitfulness in a church. Do you understand that Paul, when he talks about this fond affection in the beginning of verse number 8, he's talking about something that a mother has for a child. He's talking about gentleness. You see, we need to understand that the way that churches are planted is the way that churches will continue to grow. And again, I want you to understand that Paul was extremely affectionate of this church. And let's go back to verse number 8. For we were well pleased to impart to you not only the gospel of God, but our own lives. What's Paul saying? We didn't just come to give you the gospel. We came to give you ourselves. We came to sacrifice our own lives for you. You know what happens when a leader, a Christian leader, comes and he sacrifices his life for the people in the church? You know what happens? Something amazing happens. They begin to sacrifice their lives for others. And you know what? They don't need an evangelism program. Why? Because they're out there sacrificing and giving their lives. And so Paul says, we did not only come to give you the gospel, we came to give you our very lives. And then the last part of verse number 8 says, because you had become very dear to us. He didn't say because we're drawing a salary and we have to do this. He said, no, we did it because you're dear to us. We have such a fond affection for you. We treat you with gentleness like a nursing woman. You know, these two verses are so filled with the love that Paul had for the people of Thessalonica. And you know what? That love then came into the church. And here's Paul hundreds of miles away, and he's hearing about not only the faith of the Thessalonian church, but of the love of the Thessalonian church. The way a church is planted is going to be determined how that church touches the world. I hope that you come back next week and join us as we continue this study of the book of 1 Thessalonians.